Welcome to this wonderful evening, an evening in which we're just going to exchange ideas. So I've already introduced myself. I'm Carol Much. So I'm the Education Commissioner for the New Zealand National Commission for UNESCO. And there are some people I'd like to acknowledge before I go much further. We have in the audience Robin Baker, who is the Chair of the National Commission. Sadly, we don't have Vicky Soanes, our Secretary-General. She's not feeling well tonight. I'd like to thank the National Library staff for allowing us to use their premises. We did this last year and we found it was such a convenient and a place with a nice ambience that we wanted to come back again. So thank you for helping us out tonight. Thank you to the Secretariat of UNESCO for the organisation that you do behind the scenes. And we will have a brief message later from the Honourable Jenny Salesa, Associate Minister of Education, who is also responsible for the National Commission for UNESCO. But I've got a few opening remarks before then. Oh, I forgot to say, welcome to you. Thank you. It's Friday night in Wellington. You could have been in any number of places and here you are. And we were just having a little chat before saying one of the nice things about UNESCO events is that they don't belong to one generation or one group of people. They draw people from a whole range of diverse interests. So welcome to all of you and to everyone there who's watching us streaming live on Facebook. Actually, I think that might be my first time I've ever streamed live on Facebook, so I'll put on my best smile. Now, you're wondering, for those of you who are not familiar with UNESCO, what does the National Commission in New Zealand do? Well, of course, those of you, if I was giving you a quiz, which in my real life as a university lecturer I might do, you'd be able to tell me that it's a United Nations educational, scientific and cultural organisation. But what do we do in New Zealand? Well, we still have to uphold UNESCO's worldwide mandate, but we can't do everything. So we pick specific topics or projects that we think are more relevant to us here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And whichever ones we pick, we try to find ways in which we listen to expert voices, listen to ordinary voices, bring people together, share our knowledge, because the overall mandate is that we're here as in our little local world trying to solve massive global problems, whether they be poverty, whether they be educational inequality, whether they be climate change and so on. If we all come together from our diverse perspectives, then maybe we'll be able to find an answer to some of these. And the particular project that you have come to find out a little bit more about tonight is global citizenship education. Now, I've got lots of lovely notes and I could read out the formal definition of global citizenship education, and I will do in a moment. But first I want to tell you a story, because I always think that you won't remember the fancy bits I read out, but you will remember the stories. And this story is a bit emotional for me. Whew. Let's see if I can get through it. My son is a journalist. He's currently in a region in the world, he's in a little town, a very small city called Stepanakert. And that is, of course, in Nagorno-Karabakh. So if you don't know where that is, there's Armenia, and there's Azerbaijan, and there's a little enclave that they're fighting over. And he's right in the town that's right in the middle of that enclave. And not last night, but the night before, I was woken up in the middle of the night to be told by him that he was fine. Now, you know what that means? That something terrible has just happened and he survived it. And that's exactly what happened. He was out in the press van and they were shelled. And so he did survive and came back to the hotel. And, this is 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we debriefed. But then last night, this is the interesting part of the story that's got something to do with global citizenship education, I got another phone call. Wow, my heart leapt out of my body and I thought, oh no, not more bombs, please. But no, it was Rosa. Now, Rosa was translating for her mother. And she was telling me, I mean, she had no idea, of course, it was the middle of the night in New Zealand because it was the middle of the day in Stepanakert. And what they wanted to say was they had met my son, Nick, and they wanted to say, thank you. Oh, thank you for being such a good mother because you sent your son to the other side of the world to care about us, to care about the hospitals being bombed, to care about the children who couldn't go to school, to care about the people who, with terrible COVID-19 symptoms, are crowded into hand-dug-out bomb shelters. You cared about us. So that was, loosely the translation of Rosa's mother talking to Rosa and Rosa talking to me. And I went, that's global citizenship education. That's our role as teachers, as educators, as parents, as community people to help whoever, whether it's our children, it's our young people, the people in our communities, see us as part of a much larger global ecosystem where we can't all be journalists who go into war zones, but we can do something locally that could just be the pebble in the water that makes a huge difference nationally and internationally. So that's my story. And here's the formal definition so I can catch my breath. Global citizenship education places value on our interconnectedness as human beings beyond geographical borders and sees the issues we each experience wherever we are as collective. Human rights, inequality and poverty. These threaten our very existence, our peace, our sustainability. These are global issues, not just local issues. And so global citizenship education encourages all of us, but especially being mindful of our children and our young people, to act responsibly, to think thoughtfully, and to look around at our immediate communities and think of how we can be promoters of peace, inclusivity and sustainability globally. Whew, got through that. However, you didn't come to hear me. I've had my 5 minutes of fame now. You came to hear our amazing panel. And the people that we have tonight have come from diverse walks of life. So we have students, we have an entrepreneur, and we have an academic. And so hopefully one of these or all of these will touch you in some way. So we have Josh and Fred from St John's College in Cambridge, and they're going to tell us about some of the innovative programs that they've been involved in. And we have Sharithi from Emerge Institute, and she will tell you, I've seen her CV. Wow, some people do more in their young lives than I've probably managed to achieve in my not-so-young life. And she'll be telling us about some of the amazing things that she has done as well. And my colleague, Peter O'Connor, is going to talk about one particular project that he's been involved in, and so he can give you all the facts and figures of how many people downloaded this amazing program that he put together. So, without much more ado from me, I'm going to ask our wonderful IT people to make the Minister, via the wonders of modern technology, share some remarks with us.
Kia ora koutou katoa and greetings everyone. May I first of all offer my humble apologies for not being able to be with you in person today. I'm really delighted, though, to be able to send you this message in my capacity as Associate Minister of Education with responsibility for National Commission for UNESCO, as well as an enthusiast of global citizenship education. This is my third opportunity to support the National Commission in Global Citizenship Education. Last year, the Commission presented 5 fascinating papers on global citizenship education in the New Zealand context, and it's wonderful to have the opportunity to once again acknowledge that work and to see some practical projects being undertaken right around the country. The projects and ideas being shared tonight make a compelling case for collaboration between different people, cultures and backgrounds. Our speakers tonight have much to share and to inspire us with. This past year has been extremely tough for all of us here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, as well as right around the world. However, facing the challenges thrown up by COVID-19 pandemic also provides the perfect environment to apply the values of global citizenship education with understanding the need for interconnectedness at a local and global level being of crucial importance. In fact, there's never been a time in our recent history where our connection to one another, our communication with one another, and our actions having had such a rippling global impact. One of our younger presenters tonight worked with his school peers on an invention during lockdown to create a safe, effective, and cheap ventilator at a time when there were global concerns that this vital piece of equipment was in too short a supply to meet the pandemic demands. This kind of thinking demonstrates the essence of global citizenship education's principles, that acting on local issues and finding solutions to those can also be relevant to global problems. Global citizenship education is a strategic priority area for UNESCO and is defined as empowering learners of all ages to take up active roles both locally and globally to build more peaceful, tolerant and interactive societies. With a focus on cognitive, socio-emotional and behavioural learning, it fosters skills to better understand the world and its complexity through thinking, knowledge and communication that allows people to live alongside one another respectfully and peacefully. This is very important work, and I'm pleased that the New Zealand National Commission for UNESCO continues to actively promote, support and to connect people through with events such as tonight's. I wish you all well for the presentations, new ideas and the conversations following up from tonight's events. Malo au pito, tēnā koutou katoa.
So, malo to our Minister, to thank her very much for taking the time to put that presentation together. Before I invite the first two speakers up, and yes, I've been told, what did I say, Cambridge? There is a St John's in Cambridge, but you're St John's Hastings, so my apologies. Just to remind you that how we will go from here is we will have our speakers, the two young men will speak together and the other two speakers will speak individually. Then they will come back as a panel. I'll throw them a question or two just to warm them up, and then we will open it up to you, and we have some of our lovely staff who'll bring microphones around. So that will give you a chance to ask them specific questions about their projects or generic questions about big ideas, if that's what you wish to do. So, without further ado, let's change all my pieces of paper. Oh, I think I've got the order wrong. And we have Josh Villanueva, I have it correct, great, thank you, who is a Year 13 student at St John's College, Hastings. And wow, again, another one of those amazing CVs. So I'll just pick a few little highlights. So he's in his final year and he was appointed college captain at the beginning of this year. He's also on the College Board of Trustees. He's a young Vinnie. For those of you who are Catholics or those of you who go to charity shops, you'll know the Vinnies very well. But he's involved in a program called Whatever It Takes. And his particular interest is in mental health, especially for the most vulnerable in the community. And we also have Fred Devereaux. He is also a Year 13 student at St John's College, Hastings, also in Young Vinnies and also in Whatever It Takes. But you've already had a sneak preview from the Minister about the particular project that he's going to talk about. He also has an amazing CV, and I see he's also working on yet another project about robotics and engineering and so on. So you might want to ask him about that when he's finished. And if you don't know St John's College, then it's a Catholic boys' secondary school in the Hawke's Bay region. It's a low decile school with a roll of 390 and a very divergent student population, but they have a great focus on social enterprise and particular project work, So perfect for finding out about how global citizenship education plays out in the community. So big round of applause for our two.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Fred Devereaux, and I'm here with Josh Villanueva on behalf of our school, St John's College Hastings. I'm a Year 13 prefect at St John's, and I'd like to show my gratitude and appreciation for the privilege we have of being here tonight on this lovely city on behalf of our school. It's a huge honour to be here and have this opportunity at our age, so for that we're very thankful. Now, getting started. At St John's, we engage in both social enterprise and special projects, both of which have shared features and characteristics. They reflect the special values of St John's College. There is no limitation of entry to each program by students. All work is completed in students' own time, so there is no academic interference, and all cash flows released from the projects through awards are not retained by students, but are rather invested back into our community. Now I'll start talking about our journey with social enterprise through all the way back in 2017 with a unique partnership between our students and the youth within the Hawke's Bay prison, creating a company named Brothers. This group was a huge success, with it being a company we believe to reflect the values of St John's. They were able to secure a partnership with Icebreaker New Zealand and had a fantastic year of sales, with one of the team members being named the National Chartered Accountant CEO of the Year. In 2018, we had a group named George, who was in partnership with Ravensdown and Whatever It Takes. George was a low-cost rain and water level detector which worked in real time, providing data to the cell phones of farmers or property owners, with the driver of this venture being the extreme weather conditions that farmers face in New Zealand. Ravensdown came on board saying they loved the idea and they thought it was a very useful and cost-effective tool. We also found that this demographic suffered from a lot of mental health issues, which is why we also partnered with Whatever It Takes, which Josh will touch on later. For George, we received national publicity from TVNZ, Māori TV, and the New Zealand Herald. 2019 was the year we had the group named CARE. In this group, we had our students complete the development of a solar-powered medical sterilizer with the intention to be deployed to island nations across the Pacific where power supply is not assured. The Unity Care Mark I was a cheaper and more robust than anything in the international market. Also in 2019 and continuing into 2020, we have the Environcrete Group, which works on the development of environmentally friendly and cost-effective building material for the purpose of reducing their everyday civilians' carbon footprint with recycled products. Currently, the group are in negotiations with the Napier City Council for production and placement of a styled version of product, and we have an agreement with the Hastings District Council for stylised seating units. And finally, in 2020, we have two new groups, one being Te Tui Tui Mā Tauranga, which works on a technologically embedded product to work in conjunction with our partners in plant and food. The exact nature of the product is still confidential while the team assesses their intellectual property rights, but the company is still making incredible progress. And the other 2020 group and my social enterprise group, Project Peer, in which me and 6 others have now finished the construction of solar-powered sustainable streetlights for communities. This aims to keep both communities and workers safe while providing assistance to farmers through lighting. We as a group have partnered with firms to support our development, such as CR Automation, Free Energy, and Home and Engineering. During the coronavirus pandemic, Project Peer also created an industrial-grade ventilator, which now resides in the National Museum of Transport and Technology in Auckland. The ventilator gained national attention from Radio NZ, Stuff, NZ Herald, and the New Zealand Education Gazette. Social enterprise work at St John's embraces critical thinking, adaptation, debate, action, and responsibility. We are always striving as a community to set the bar high for other schools so they can reach their fullest potential. I'd now like to move on to special projects at St John's, which will be spoken on by Josh.
Good evening. Just to introduce myself again, my name is Josh Villanueva, and I'm the head boy for St. John's this year. It's been already said, but I'd just like to show my own personal appreciation for the opportunity to speak. Talking about special projects, I'd like to start with our National Poverty Index. In 2017, our students presented our first National Poverty Index, characterized by simplicity but with a strong resonance to our St. John's community. There are several components of our index that represent our considered approach as to the measures of poverty in our community and our wider New Zealand society. First, we have endeavored to make the index non-political in nature, insofar as students are independent for any prevailing agendas. Next, solutions are not offered, nor is causation as to the drivers of the specifically identified levels of poverty. What is provided by this robust index is a clear insight into the currently widening poverty gap within New Zealand and its effect on our both local and national community. This index is our collective effort to label the issue of poverty using an evidence-based approach. With this, we can hope it can be the basis of good quality discussion, both locally and nationally, with the end game of ensuring poverty levels are reduced. The calculation is based on 3 pillars: housing affordability, child poverty, and national prison muster numbers, and our results can be seen on screen. The next initiative we have is Policy Lighthouse. This initiative is 2 years old, which comprises of Year 10 and 11 students. These students will regularly make submissions to the Select Committee on bills they have interest on as youth from the province. Students seek the establishment of a permanent drug court within Hawke's Bay region. It will make both the community stronger and safer and provide a positive and proactive approach for those who are convicted. Students making up the Lighthouse are employing the best evidence and reason to pursue their goal. There is a very clear emphasis on acting in a non-political manner with a focus on the issue. This advocacy is a theme within the college community, having been engaged for the past 4 years working alongside the Hawke's Bay prison youth, street advocacy, and establishing a long-term relationship with Whatever It Takes Trust, WIT, who works alongside the addicted and homeless. As a collective of students, proactive advocacy has been pursued, sharing their story about the need for change and building strong community network within the decision makers who share their goal for positive difference. Through establishing a drug court, and where we have had recent success, as now a drug court is being considered to be inducted in the Hawke's Bay region. The journey thus far has been difficult for the students. Many barriers and obstacles have been encountered and overcome. But there is a richness which can be expressed by each student's participation. And such work is undertaken within a Catholic secondary school environment with clear value. Community-based work that students can know that make a real difference in lives of those on the margins of society. The story offered of that students from the province of Hawke's Bay who have been working away quietly and in a dignified manner on a sustainable project in their own time with the goal of assisting their community to becoming stronger and safer. The Hawke's Bay has a significant problem of drug addiction, crime, gang membership, and domestic violence, with students all having their own story to tell. Although within a college community that supports them and nourishes them and has an evidence-based approach to change.
As we saw accentuated during the lockdown, education is now likely to be supported by digital technology. But based on our work and experience at St. John's College, it is not appropriate for learning to be delivered by this means alone. We believe our social enterprise and project work have met this need. As Brazilian educator Paulo Freire observed many years ago, learning is an active process and not simply a matter of banking information in a passive recipient mind. Teaching needs to be transactional or a transformational process, rather than just a transmission of information. The transactional aspect is essential to enabling students to challenge their situation in life, where they must learn to do if they are to play their parts as active citizens in a better world. Teaching must be approached in a disruptive way, if to instill inquiry skills in learners and encourage them to think for themselves, rather than mindlessly accept. We believe our social enterprise project and special projects have met this need. We are delighted with the opportunity to share our work this evening for our friends back at St. John's and those students who have preceded us. New technologies are always being developed, global responses discussed and talked about to various problems in the modern age. We need a good model of education that works and is embedded in our communities, models that can inform both national and global approaches. We must take this idea and spread it far and wide. Thank you for having us, and have a brilliant night.
Wow. I mean, what are you? I'm speechless. Are you speechless? Here we have two amazing young men, only two of the many amazing young people that we have in New Zealand. So thank you so much. You've exemplified for us why we need to hear your voices. I could see Peter in the front there going, wow, they're talking about Paulo Freire. These are young people who know about Paulo Freire. He's so excited. I'm sure he'll tell you more about Paulo Freire later. But wow, yes, thank you. And I just want to pick on one word. The word that resonated with me was dignified. And you absolutely exemplified that. You do this in your own time, on top of your studies, and you do it in a quiet way so that many people around New Zealand will never have heard of you. And it's through that dignity and authenticity that we need young people like you, because you will help us solve these really crucial problems that, I'm sorry, my generation and the generation of some of you out there have kind of left you with. So, wow, amazing round of applause for them again. Thank you. Okay, can we top that? Well, it's not that we're trying to top that, but it's just that it's such an exciting night, because we're now moving on to a slightly older, a little bit more experienced social entrepreneur, but again with a CV that would sort of blow mine out of the water. So Shruti has been working in Boston, where she was interested in getting business people to think about the environment and how that interacted with people's lives. And one of the big things that she learned was that it's about changing mindsets. And she went on to work in India with a group called Better World, and focused on teaching empathy, creativity and global issues in classrooms. And then she came back to New Zealand and trained as a coach and ran a social entrepreneur business. Then she went off to Oxford and got herself an MBA and did amazingly well by reading her CV. Wow. I think I'll stop there, because she could probably tell us a lot more about what she has done. But yet again, another amazing young person. So welcome to the stage, Shruti.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you so much for having me. Ko Shruti tōku ingoa. It's my real pleasure to be here. And really, I'm so grateful to be here. Even just to step on the flight from Auckland, I was like, wow, we can be on flights and gather in person, which is such a privilege given the global situation. So really a joy to be here in person. Really want to acknowledge the folks at UNESCO and everyone else who's made this event possible. Love your kaupapa and really happy to support, and look forward to much more inspiration, conversation and connection. So thank you. So the project I want to share a bit more about today is with a little venture that myself and 3 colleagues are running up in Auckland called Emerge Institute. And this really builds on our collective experience of being in the sort of social entrepreneurship world, seeing many change makers like these 2 young men kind of go after issues they care about. And we noticed a couple of gaps or issues when it came to trying to make an impact and address the issues that our world so desperately needs addressing. One issue we found was just the lack of self-awareness. So often we're so focused on what we do and how to have impact that we don't often question, why am I doing this? Or where is it really coming from? You know, many of us have guilt and pressure, overwhelm, anxiety, all of these emotions, a lot of stress, and that's often forgotten and leads to all sorts of burnout and issues in relationships in ourselves and our mental health crisis, as you spoke about, Josh. And often this piece of connection is also lost. You know, I love the definition of global citizenship education that emphasized interconnectedness. And we find, particularly with environmental entrepreneurs, we're often sitting behind a computer trying to solve the climate crisis. We're sitting in rooms like this, disconnected from the very planet, the water, the ocean, the earth that sustains us, that's a part of us, our Mother Earth, a Papatuanuku, and that she's not part of the conversation the sort of spiritual disconnect from each other, from the land and from ourselves, and our source of what drives us leads to us perhaps not being as effective as we could. And so we formed Emerge really as a way to help change makers, young or old. You know, you could be 16, you could be 70. We've had the full spectrum come on our courses and really give them the tools to manage themselves, to gain more self-awareness and reconnect so that their work can really serve the communities and have the impact it wants to have. So I'm going to pause there and play you a short video. It's from our first project. It was an oceans lab looking at how we restore the health and the life force of Tikapa Moana, the Hauraki Gulf up in Auckland. It will give you a flavour of what our work looks like, and then we can share more together. We're alive at a time that we need to take action and shift things. But to shift the world, we need to shift ourselves. Fundamentally, we need to operate from a place where we're calm and connected and relaxed. And if that's there, we think the kind of action that we'll produce is going to be far more effective.
So the Oceans Lab was all around how do we restore the health of Tikapa Moana. And we went through a range of processes and workshops, connecting to ourselves and our relationship with Moana, and then coming up with projects to work on how do we restore the health and the life force.
You are in this mode of working towards a project when really we are the project.
I can definitely see the behavioural change in myself already. So there's been a few times, especially the last couple of days, where I've caught myself changing my own behaviour. And that's been a really lush feeling to actually go, hey, look, this is making a change.
The way that the space was held and the way that the program was put together and facilitated really made me feel really safe to be vulnerable with this group of people who we didn't know a few days ago, how we've just become, you know, shared really deeply and intimately with each other, and it's been amazing.
We have such hope from these 21 people and the way they showed up and the ripple effect that will have in the communities they work in, on the Gulf, on Auckland City, on Aotearoa, and then in the world.
Awesome. And yeah, big acknowledgement to our many friends and sponsors that made that possible. So this project was bringing 21 environmental innovators. There were folks from council, small business, big business, students, kind of retired folks, really members of the community that came together to explore what does meaningful action for oceans restoration look like. So I wanted to share a couple of stories of people that came on the Gulf to give you a sense of the journey they've been on and the impact this has had. So Adam, who was one of the people you saw in that video, he runs Waiheke Dive and Snorkel. So he's a small business owner. Like many people in Waiheke, cares deeply about the Hauraki Gulf, the ocean kind of that the island rests on. And his business is a vehicle to kind of do conservation education. Not only that, you know, he's involved, he was at the time involved with several local non-profits sitting on their boards, the Waiheke Marine Collective, an organisation kind of doing grassroots community action. And he came into this program really tired, like really exhausted, really overwhelmed, like many change makers I've seen, like myself at points in my life, you know, really like trying to make an impact and grabbing every opportunity he could, but feeling like it just wasn't going anywhere, feeling exhausted, feeling guilty for not giving his best effort, seeing his personal relationships really suffer. And he came on this lab, and we really spent kind of initially 5 days on the island, followed by many workshops and coaching sessions to explore kind of what was going on for Adam and where was he coming from. And he realized actually what he needs to do is say no to a whole lot of things. It's kind of funny because he came onto this program and quit many of the organizations through which he was actually addressing the Gulf's issues. But what he found was, as he said no to the things that he was just grabbing on for the sake of trying to have an impact, he was able to slow down and breathe out, take care of his well-being. He started doing yoga, treating his body better, had some brave conversations and personal relationships to get them in place. and started running his business in a different way, rather than this sort of rushed pressure, go, 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 faster, better, more culture that we live in, particularly in the cities. You know, living in Auckland, everyone's rushing somewhere, going somewhere. We feel kind of somehow validated by our busy schedules. I heard this notion recently called internalized capitalism, when I measure my self-worth based on how much I do and how many people I know and how many things, you know, I can put to my name. And he sort of began to shine the light on that, not judging that as wrong, but just brought his awareness to that and decided, I want to focus on doing one or two things really well and slow down and bring more presence and groundedness to what I do. So with his business, it's been a crazy journey. When he first came on, he found the business was really growing rapidly. And he found as it was growing so quickly, there was a risk that the purpose would be lost. If we're going to serve more and more tourists and give them snorkeling adventures, there's a risk that will hurt the oceans in the process, that we'll have more people in there polluting the oceans, that we don't have space to talk about conservation. And he's like, I don't want to just, follow this game that everyone's playing. So through this journey, he's been able to really create space in his company to focus on well-being, to focus on what really matters, to kind of clear out a lot of the noise and go, why are we here and how do we have the impact we want to have? And what blew my mind a few days ago, I was speaking to Adam, and he said in the last 3 months, like tourism businesses have struggled through COVID, right? We're not getting any tourists here, hardly any. And his business has had the same revenue for the last 3 months as last year. And I said, Adam, how is that even possible? Like, how can you do that? And he said, it's because we spend more time connecting with our clients. We build relationship. We focus on our well-being. We have more space for creative ideas. We're seeing new possibility. We're working with council to get students in the Gulf. We're helping citizenship science. We're having more impact. And I'm more resourced. I'm not so tired. And my relationship at home is better. And I was so touched to see this kind of ethos in action. And I think to give Adam real credit, like there's the tools and there's the processes, but it really takes bravery and someone to go, I want to apply this, which Adam has been able to do. Another sort of aspect of this emerge process is really bringing Mother Nature into our process of change. So another wahine, a beautiful woman from Auckland Council, her name is Dani. She was in our Oceans Lab and her job is awesome. She trains high school leaders to be climate environmental advocates and supports them in their kind of leadership journey. And she realized the whole environmental services team at council doesn't really bring the earth into the conversation. We talk about the environment as if she's separate from us. And I think it's how I've been educated as well, Like, even if you say Mother Earth, and when you talk about, the earth having a life force or a spirit, the first time I heard this, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like, what do you mean? Like, we scientifically observe the earth with our minds, but the reality is we're in deep connection with her. The Indigenous Māori here, I think, know that and live that through their notions of Papatuanuku. I've discovered even my people in India, we call her Bhumata. Mother Earth is a concept in many traditions. And if we really explore this notion of the environment and how we relate to it, the reality is our existence is dependent on it. The air I breathe, the water I drink, the food I eat, like I am nature in a very practical, physical sense. And so if I'm not connected to her, how can I really serve her and work with her to restore the health? I think often we find in kind of making change, we have this very ego, human-centric approach where humans are superior to nature. Nature exists for us, our exploitation and to serve us. And our approach with Emerge is sort of humbling us to realize, we're children of the earth. I exist because of Mother Earth. And therefore, from that place of reverence and gratitude and connection, how can I serve her? And as people embody this mindset, it's a subtle shift. It's not a tangible technology. It's a subtle shift in mindset. The way teams work and the way solutions come about are profoundly different. An example, so Adam previously, when he had the pressure to grow his business, all the other dive companies were saying, yeah, take on more customers, you can make much more money. And he said, no, if I take on more customers, it's going to hurt the earth, it's going to hurt our community. So actually, our approach should be to maybe take less profit, but invest more deeply in connection and education. The kinds of solutions aren't so much about being more effective and more efficient so we can, run our cars on less fuel or run our lights for longer, but maybe consuming less resources to begin with, because I'm aware that if I consume less, actually the earth is better off, there's more for others, and what's good for me is good for the whole. It's this idea of interconnectedness. And I think a metaphor that sums up the sort of shift that we're trying to create with Emerge is the human body. I think the human body is amazing. I'm no biologist, but it's just a remarkable piece of science. Every organ functions to such perfection, the lungs, the heart, everything plays its part in such harmony. and such unity. And you think, even in the instance that my teeth might bite my tongue doesn't get angry at my teeth and go, why did you bite me? We forgive and we accept and we acknowledge we're all part of this one living system. If I get a cut, it's amazing how quickly my cells can reorganize and heal it. We saw the Auckland Harbour Bridge, fall apart, and it's taken us months to try and get that in order. But the human body, with such efficiency and such, it really revolves around this greater purpose, and everyone plays their part. So I guess what we're trying to say is, what would it look like for us to be like the human body? What would it look like for each of us to play our part to perfection without trying to prove, without trying to get validation, without trying to, nothing is guilty. Nothing feels like I'm not doing enough today. I need to do more. I'm not busy enough. There's none of that going on. Everything takes such comfort in its authentic place. Nothing is more or less important. It's not about climbing a ladder and being higher or worse. But if we can really tune into our inner wisdom, if we can slow down, really be in that relaxed place, our sort of belief is we can find our unique part. And for Adam, it was saying no to a whole bunch of things. For Danny, it was really reconnecting with the earth and creating space in her team to see how she could train her environmental leaders. And the kind of solutions we create as a system are going to be far more effective if we can really embody that level of unity and that level of connectedness, which is a nice word to throw around, but what does it really mean to feel and to acknowledge that your actions affect me and my actions affect you? So that's really the essence of the Emerge method, a belief in our deep interconnectedness, a focus on self-awareness, not just what we do or how we do, but why I do it, and supporting entrepreneurs and change makers, young or old, in their global citizenship learning journey to really learn how to come from that place of fullness, of wholeness, of groundedness. It's where practices like meditation, journaling, being in nature, you name it, there are so many ways in which we can plug into that place. But the belief is if we can operate from that place, the solutions we create will be truly systemic and support the flourishing future that we all dream of. So all the very best, and thank you for having me.
Well, I felt like I was watching a TED talk. What an accomplished speaker you are, as well as the words. You have such a way. So I took away two messages from that. One was internalised capitalism. Whoa, okay, I'm taking that one back to work. I'm going to talk to a few people about my internalised capitalism and theirs, and maybe think, not only did you present so well, but actually you made us all think about ourselves and slowing down and reconnecting and thinking about Papatūānuku, thinking about nature and so on. So that was so important, because the other thing I was really struck with in your talk was we are the project. Someone said that on your little video, and I thought, yes, we are the project. We can bring up wonderful speakers who inspire us, but actually all of us, we are the project. And Gracie Alley just came and scrawled a little note to say that Danny, that you mentioned, actually was one of our UNESCO youth leaders. So there we are. It's that interconnected world again, isn't it? So that she's connected to you, she's connected to us, and we are all connected together. Okay, Peter, you've got to top this. Do you think you can? We'll have to see. So I could talk about Peter and his shoes and all sorts of other things, but I'll stick to my notes. But actually, one of the things that we do know about Peter, he has the most amazing shoes. He doesn't have his green ones on today. He has his fancy Portuguese ones. But, we all have our little ways, don't we? So I better read the CV rather than go off script too much. So, Peter is a world leader in applied theatre research, focusing on the role and place of the arts for social transformation. And as with our other speakers, truly he does have, I'm off script now, he does have this most amazing CV. So he's worked in prisons and refugee centres and homeless centres and disaster zones. In fact, we connected when we worked in post-disaster Christchurch, post-earthquake Christchurch, post-bushfires in Australia, and doing some work recently around COVID-19, which is what he's going to talk about. So we go from young people full of energy to, and I've no idea your age, but you still look young to me, so a slightly older young person full of energy, to an even older person full of energy. So Peter O'Connor from the University of Auckland, hands together.
Having spent some time talking about being embodied, that the longer you sit, the less you learn. So do you want to have a stretch? Yes. Oh my God. And how about saying something to the person, maybe even if you know them really well, give them a hug. You know, or an hour, warm yourselves up. Yeah. Oh, I know. I get frozen. Wow. Don't rush. Yeah, take a seat. Don't rush. You know, we've been told to do things nice and easily in life now. Nā rangatira e nā hohoki, tēnā tātou katoa. It's a real delight to listen to this extraordinary group of younger people committed to making a difference in the world. Makes you feel good on a Friday night. Usually by Friday, I'm well and truly into the first whiskey by now. So it's kind of like, it's a real delight to have young people talk about Paulo Freire, a Brazilian educator who understood that the purpose of education is not personal achievement, not individual achievement, but the idea of making humans more fully human. And that part of making yourself more fully human is a capacity to provide that same opportunity to others. And to be reminded of that by you two fine young men today made this old professor feel particularly proud to be alive. So thank you so much for that. In January of this year, I got a phone call from a colleague and friend of mine in Australia. And Carol's a researcher in disasters. I'm just a disaster as a researcher. But she rang me and she said, Peter, I don't know if you know, Australia's on fire. And I did know for a number of reasons from the news, but it was also at a time when the smoke and the ashes were darkening our skies here as well. And they, because of the work that I've been doing for a number of years in disaster zones, starting as far back as 2008 in Sichuan, to Christchurch on multiple occasions, most recently in Christchurch after the terror attack, working with children there. My colleague and friend said, do you think you could help teachers here in Australia? So I rang my friend Carol, and I rang a number of other friends, and within 2 weeks we were working in Sydney with teachers, and we created a program called the Banksia Initiative. And the Banksia Initiative was about the idea that when schools reopened after the long summer holiday in Australia, teachers needed to deal with the anxiety, the worries and the fears of children who must have imagined that they were living at the end of time. The sky literally dark in the middle of the day. You know, those children in Melbourne who were on holiday waiting on the beaches as the fires crashed towards them. And that school would go back. And what would school do? What would teachers do? And I remember meeting in Sydney with academics and artists and a whole range of people thinking about what that would mean. I remember sitting with about 40 teachers at the Sydney Theatre Company, and we were going to do some work, but the first hour and a half they sat and cried, talked about their fears, their anxieties, and their incredible anger with their government over the response to the fires. And I realised that the theatre has always played the role as the forum, the place where you gather to talk about the things that mattered. So I brought them into that space, was ready to launch into some theatre work with them, but we sat and we talked, because the possibilities of communal dialogue are so small for us in the kind of fractured worlds in which we lived. But Carol and I, really good friends from all across Australia, worked together to pull together a really small resource, an